The Italian Carabinieri is probably unique in the world in that it acts as a police force, it comes under the Ministry of Defence, it also acts as a military force and has been involved in numerous peacekeeping mission operations around the world. Although it is a military force, it is not part of the Army, the Navy or the Air Force, but it is a separate arm of the armed forces. If this wasn't strange enough, it is older than the Italian state. How is that possible? Let's find out. To find out more, we need to go back to the end of the Napoleonic Wars and the Congress of Vienna, which followed it. The Congress of Vienna basically redrew the map of Europe. It was a balancing act between the four main victorious powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. The idea being to maintain the balance of power between European nations and hence avoid future wars. As you can imagine, the populations who found themselves suddenly becoming citizens of different states were not consulted at all. Given that the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars of the previous 20 plus years had awakened nationalist sentiment all over the place, this was a recipe for disaster. That's another story. More importantly for our story was the fact that the advent of peace resulted in the demobilization of millions of soldiers. Combine this with a series of poor harvests, an economic recession, and you can imagine that a lot of people, especially ex-soldiers, turned to crime to make ends meet. The Italian peninsula was dramatically affected by the redrawing of the map brought about by the Congress of Vienna, in particular the unification of Piedmont, part of the Kingdom of Sardinia, with the old Republic of Genoa, into one state under the House of Savoy. The House of Savoy had been around since medieval times and gained substantial territory in their new kingdom. The first king, Emmanuel I, established the Carabinieri on July 13th, 1814, as a branch of the military, with law enforcement responsibilities. His reasons were that he needed a force to combat the widespread banditry in his kingdom, partly caused by the aforementioned demobilization of soldiers, and also to maintain public order. So far, so good. But why were they called Carabinieri? The name derives from the French word carabinier, meaning soldier armed with a carbine, and the Napoleonic armies fielded regiments of carabiniers. The carbine is a kind of short musket that could be much more easily carried and used on horseback than the long weapons used by infantry soldiers. However, having a short barrel made them far less accurate. The carabiniers in Napoleon's army were a kind of hybrid soldiers who travelled on horseback but could fight either mounted or on foot. They were similar to dragoons, who had been around for centuries, but they were heavier. They used heavier horses and sometimes even wore armoured breastplates. This type of hybrid, or maybe better say, more flexible soldiers, was perfect for the king's purposes. As Italy unified over the next 40-odd years under Piedmont, the Carabinieri played a vital role, both in the various military campaigns, but also in maintaining law and order among the newly acquired Italian territories. Contrary to popular belief, not all Italians welcomed this unification business, and some actively opposed it. The Carabinieri were kept very, very busy. During the following colonial wars and 2 world wars, the Carabinieri continued to play its role as soldiers, policemen, and military policemen. This is effectively the situation we have today. Many visitors to Italy are quite surprised to see that there are effectively 2 national police forces working side by side and perplexed by this apparent duplication. Naturally, in their police role, both the Carabinieri and the National Police come under the operational control of the local prefetto, who is the head of law enforcement in any area. The Carabinieri have evolved into a modern law enforcement agency with a wide range of duties. They handle various tasks including criminal investigations, counter-terrorism, border control, and maintaining public order. The big difference is that the Carabinieri maintain a distinctive military-style uniform and follow a hierarchical ranked structure similar to the military. The Carabinieri have participated in various international peacekeeping missions and operations and showcased their capabilities on the global stage. Kosovo, Afghanistan and Iraq are 3 examples that spring to mind, but there are many others. One of the consequences of this is that when dealing with an emergency in Italy, you do have the choice of calling either the police or the Carabinieri. Some people have described this as a form of internal competition, and there is certainly a rivalry between the 2 forces. Competition should, at least in theory, incentivize organisations to up their game. So having more than one law enforcement agency covering the same roles and in the same territory may not be such a bad idea after all. Bye for now.